Welcome back. I hope you found the breakout sessions to be valuable. I can speak for the in-person audience that we really enjoyed them. There are some themes that came out during the day that I think we'll be trying to pull into our conversation this afternoon. So I am now very pleased to welcome our CEO panel for our final session of the day. Special thanks to ATC for sponsoring this panel. During this discussion, we will look at what's ahead for the renewable industries, including exploring the barriers and opportunities Clean Grid Alliance and our partners must work on to advance renewable deployment in the Midwest. And don't forget to use the chat to ask questions. Give these guys some hard ones. We'll try to answer as many as we can. Now, joining me on stage this afternoon, Tristan Grimbert. He gave me permission to say his last name that way. President and Chief Executive Officer of EDF Renewables, and thank you so much for being our 20th anniversary sponsor for the conference. We also have Candy Jansen, Business Development Manager at Blattner Energy, and Ken Young, Chief Operating Officer of Apex Clean Energy. Welcome, everyone. You know, there have been a lot of good themes today, but that we'll talk about, but I just want the audience to get a little bit of a sense of your companies to start with. Tristan, I know that you guys have some business lines that the audience might not be familiar with. Candy, I know that you have an acquisition that recently happened, and Ken, you guys have had announcements about some big new financing. So Tristan, why don't we start with you for a couple comments?
I'll be happy to. So EDF Renewables has been in business for 37 years now in the US. So we're one of the oldest wind company, but we've grown a lot since the good old wind days. We today have 4 business lines. We have grid scale power, which we're famous for, the 100, 200, 300 megawatt solar or wind project. We've had it solar, we've had it storage, we're adding offshore as well. We won a big PPA in our joint venture with Shell off the coast of New Jersey in June. So this is going super well from that point of view. We have a distribution scale business, which is focused on a few megawatt, 1 to 20 megawatt project ground mounted for utilities in the load pockets. And we have a behind-the-meter business line called On-Site. PowerFlex is the brand name that optimize the activity of the customer on their site to be able to minimize and green as much as possible their consumption. So that's kind of what we're doing. It feels like it's the same old story, but hey, we're growing in offshore very fast. We're growing in hydrogen. We're growing in behind-the-meter, EV charging, et cetera. So it is, on a day-to-day basis, it is changing a lot.
Yes, and I am so thankful that at least yet in the Midwest, we don't have to think about offshore. It's a whole nother animal, and I just think it's going to be enormous. So, and it's got challenges that onshore does not have. So, Candy, do you want to talk a little bit about Blattner?
Absolutely. So Blattner is one of the nation's leading utility scale EPCs. We focus on onshore wind, the solar and battery storage markets. Our company is 113 years old. And so up until just recently, we were 4th generation Blattner family owned and operated. As recently as last month, we did join the Quanta Services family, it's very exciting for us because it gives us the opportunity to continue to scale along with the market and have additional resources to help meet the needs that our clients have. We are still operated or led by Scott Blattner. He is our president. Most recently, we celebrated a very exciting milestone. We celebrated our 50,000 megawatts of installed renewable energy, which is really exciting.
That's amazing.
It's huge. We had a great celebration to celebrate that milestone. In addition to that, our company works in 33 states across the nation, and we've been recognized as top solar and top wind developer or builders in the country. So very exciting.
And we were talking earlier, and you said your new expansion in your building in St. Cloud, or outside of St. Cloud, Avon. You've already outgrown that, or you're busting at the seams.
We're busting at the seams.
Yeah.
It's a hot commodity to have workspace in Avon right now, and I've been with Blattner for just over a year right now, and when I started, I had heard, hey, we're just moving into this new portion of the building, and this is going to meet our needs for the next 5 years, and we're there. We have people who are
You're
working
there
remote.
4 years early.
Yeah, people
Yeah.
who are working remote, and talk about hoteling or sharing office spaces for people who have hybrid schedules, and it's exciting, but definitely creates new opportunities to think and work differently.
Right. You were also mentioning, too, that you're responsible for the 5-year projections for your company. And so that must be a challenge to try to keep a handle on what's going on. And I think growth is exciting, but it's as hard to manage as decline. I mean,
Yes.
I think about the coal industry managing a decline, but the renewable energy industry is really on the upswing. That explosive growth is hard to manage.
Yes, it is very exciting. My team, we do a lot of our organization's forecasting, and so looking at the market and what are the industry experts saying where the market is going to go, and working with our clients and where they're going to go to help us predict where do we need to go, and if we need to be there in 3 years, we need to start planning for that right now.
Yeah.
And so it's super exciting and it's fun. Sometimes it's like, okay, we need to figure this out, and how are we going to make this happen now, and make sure that we're prepared for what's coming. But
Right.
yeah.
Well, CGA can relate to that on a very much smaller scale, but we actually often ask those same questions. Where are our members going? How do we get ahead of challenges and opportunities? What do we need to be working on? So, Ken, do you want to tell us about Apex?
Sure, happy to. Apex is a renewable energy developer, now to be owner-operator of wind and solar assets. We are headquartered in Charlottesville, Virginia. We started in 2009, which, if you think back, that was about the worst time to start a wind business, right after the financial crisis. But it tells you a little bit about Apex, that we're a little counterintuitive. And we had a founder with a big vision for what renewable energy could become, and we're starting to see that vision realized. We've commercialized about 8 gigawatts of projects, almost all of those except one since 2014.
Wow.
And our staff was a little over 200 for about 4 years there, and right around the beginning of COVID, we started expanding our portfolio broadly. We see where the industry is going. We've added 50% more staff, so we're about 320 full-time employees today in all aspects of the business, from originating projects all the way through operations. We've started some ancillary businesses that are in their formative mode: storage, distributed energy. We signed the largest hydrogen PPA that's been signed, and so we're looking at how we can expand and scale off our business. The big exciting news for Apex is that traditionally we've sold our projects because we didn't really have a large balance sheet.
Okay.
And we've recently partnered with Ares Capital. Ares is a large private equity infrastructure firm. They've purchased 3 of our projects historically, and also had a corporate debt facility with Apex and helped us out on one of our projects with some project debt. So they know us quite well, and they're a great partner at a great time for Apex. And so that's really the fuel that's going to push us through the next phase of our growth here. And we couldn't be more excited. So we've signed with them. We're in a regulatory period of review, and we look forward to closing that transaction before the end of the year and getting on to a little bit different business model where we do own and operate the assets. And we'll still sell assets strategically, but not in the same manner that we did historically. So we couldn't be more pleased. Like Blattner, we are actually having a new headquarters built in Charlottesville.
Yes.
So we're an anchor tenant in a new sustainable building. It's the largest timber frame building on the East Coast. It is fully sustainable, net zero, and we intend to move in December. So new partner, new policy coming. I think we'll talk more about that. New building. We are pumped for what's coming next.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. We're going to have to figure out how to keep up with it all. But a phrase we've heard today a lot is once in a lifetime opportunity. And so I think I'm seeing some head shaking here, and with the energy legislation that's slowly making its way to the president's desk, it'll be really open a lot of opportunities. We've had some panels today that have addressed kind of the nuts and bolts of a few things, of the ITC, PTC, and kind of the stackable incentives that are available. I feel like we have a lot of work to do to understand what we can help with to allow developers to capture those opportunities and that stackability. So, but maybe just a thought about what do you think about this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and how are you really gearing up for it? You guys have said a little bit about it, but say a few more words about how you're thinking about capturing the opportunity.
Sure, I'll be happy to step in. I think you're right. There is a tremendous opportunity in front of us. There's also tremendous challenges. So the image I keep using for my board is we have tremendous tailwind and tremendous headwinds, and we're in the middle juggling with that. So it's a very unusual time. We've built 20 gigawatts so far in the last 10 years, and planning to build another 24 in the next 10 years. And I think the last 3 years have been very, very rocky. So in the previous 10 years, we were within 0.5% of our budget. And the last 3 years, since it's actually started before COVID, it's with the trade war with China that when it started, all the costs have started to move. We had huge transportation issue, tariff, and et cetera. So our world has become much less predictable in less 3 or 4 years, I would say, 3 years mostly. So I think that we have a tremendous opportunity to be able to have visibility and stability on a policy that will support renewable for good, and be able to deploy the know-how that we have, the capital that we have, and the ability to build projects. So it's very exciting, and we still need to deliver on that. As was mentioned today on in many sessions, there is a lot of uncertainty whether it's going to come at all or not, under what form, and etc. I think one other thing that we do need is stability. The market is big. It's very competitive, and we get to very competitive price of energy for renewable, but we need a little bit more stability to be able to deploy. Our strategic plan is 10 years, and if you want to do offshore, it's 7 years of development, 3 years of construction. You need to be on a 10-year horizon, and that needs some planning. So we can't have policy change all the time. I really welcome the Biden administration has been, I think, extraordinary, not only in terms of what they intend to deliver to the industry, but also in the collaborative mode that we have. They're listening to the industry. They're trying to find solution, and also to try to find some time to adapt to the changes. So being able to ramp up the teams is one thing, but also transitioning to more domestic manufacturing, finding enough labor, and et cetera, are things that are going to take time. We're super excited to be part of that. But there is a lot of things to iron out in the next few years.
Yeah, you're right. So you're seeing positive things both in the short term and in the long term, really creating that roadmap, that glide path, but there's a lot to implement, a lot to deliver on. So Candy, how do you guys factor that big opportunity into what you're looking at for your 5-year forecast and beyond?
Yeah, definitely there's a lot of opportunity out there, and I think, as Tristan has said, it's exciting to see this be more of a long-term plan. That gives us the opportunity to find more efficiencies in the market and collaborate as well. The struggle that we see right now in the short term is how do we get that labor force in order to continue to support the growth plans and the growth that we need. And when I'm working on forecasting, there's the supply chain struggles that we have right now, and building out this longer term plan allows opportunity for that supply chain to levelize a little bit, as opposed to these peaks and valleys following the tax incentives. So excited to hopefully help see that levelize a little bit, allow for better development of the projects and that collaboration, as well as in the short term, hopefully we can figure out a solution to help that labor pool and help people to see that renewables are here to stay. This is a career opportunity. It's not just a job in the short term because we're in a 2-year boom. I had read an article that is talking about this energy transition and comparing it to the modern day gold rush. And it's hot, it's booming, but in comparison to the gold rush, this is long term. And so for us, I think the biggest thing is being able to find the resources to scale our organization to support our clients and their goals, but then also ensuring that we maintain the culture of who we are and that commitment to the safety, the quality, and the relationships that we have, and stay true to who we are.
Yeah. Ken, what do you think? How are you guys looking at this?
Well, it's really fantastic to see potentially a 10-year horizon of some stability. Just personally, it's all about me. So let me tell you a little personal story. I was able to join the wind business because of the extensions that were put in. I think in 2005, we had 4 years of certainty, and we saw the run up that took place there. And then Personally, I've lived through 4 moves all over the country because we were boom and bust on these various cycles.
Okay.
And I worked at Vestas in 2012, and we sold 0 turbines in North America, and I had to look at empty factories every day, and I had to question whether or not I should continue in this industry. And so from there to here, it's an incredible change. I think this is the biggest policy change since 1992, and the PTCs were conceived. And what we do with it is our go forward and our mantle, and we need to mind the opportunity that is at hand. I do agree with Tristan. The projects are very difficult these days. They're super competitive. If you go back to the 2005 timeframe, see how many people, 2007, how many people were doing wind? How many people are doing wind now?
Right.
It's very much consolidated. Very few people can do it. Super proud of our team and what we've been able to accomplish. But the projects are only getting harder. The technology has enabled us to go to places that we never could have conceived, and we're dealing with additional challenges in and around that. So what I'm super encouraged about is that the industry has come together for this policy change, and we've matured. Instead of every shop for themselves, we're now coalescing, and it's encouraging to be here with this group that is coming together to solve problems where we can and then competing where we need to.
Right, right. Well, definitely we need to band together here to get this one done. So you all talked about long-term certainty and stability, but also the need to deliver. And we'll get to the projects that are a lot more difficult these days in just a second. But as we were hearing from different Biden administration officials today and Commissioner Clements, I kept thinking, if we screw this up, there's going to be a lot of disappointed people, and politics is going to enter more than it ever has before. And, lots of Republicans who are naysayers on some of this stuff are going to say, see, told you so, you guys couldn't do this. So a lot riding on this, but, and we'll come back to some of those themes, but so talk to me about a couple of the challenges, Tristan, that when you say projects are harder, what are a couple things that we need to work on? What are a couple things that you worry about? I mean, I'll give you one example from this past week from our CGA Life. We were talking about on one of our Land and Liberty Coalition calls that's working very locally on siting challenges about the state of Wisconsin. So a lot of solar has been approved there. They've got, they joined the Gigawatt Club this past year. There's a big supply chain coming in the state, but it's getting harder, even with just 1,000 megawatts in the state. And so I said to the people on the phone, you mean the honeymoon's over? And they're like, it's over. So, and I think it was Chris Kunkel who said, stuff is only going to get harder from here. So what do we do with that? How do you de-risk to the extent possible projects?
So I think you're mostly referring to the development piece of it and the community engagement and relationship. And it's something that we've done like others for a very long time, and really see ourselves as a guest of that community for the next, I think it was mentioned on a panel today, for the next 40 years or something. So I think it's getting harder, but that recipe, that relationship continues to work. This is not what's keeping me up at night.
Yes, tell us what is.
What is
the
really...
The financial piece?
Not at all, because when you have good project, you can always find the money.
The transmission piece.
A little bit.
Okay.
Makes me go to bed later.
I'll stop guessing and let you tell us.
Right now, it's getting solar panels. The key issue is that we have most of the market today is solar.
We were going to get to that.
Yes, I know, but you're asking.
Yes. Absolutely. So supply.
Supply is the key issue. Costs in solar have increased 25% over the last 12 months for PPAs that were signed at a time where the costs were much lower. So those projects are not only not economically viable, but on the top of it, we don't even know whether we can import the panels or not. And there is the looming threat of tariff, and there is the import ban, and et cetera. So really what's waking me up at night, I go to bed a little bit later because of transmission, because that's a big one. But what wakes me up at night is really the supply chain. Price of a container has been multiplied by 10 over the last 12 months. coming from China. So that's a big issue. And I think the administration is very aware of that. And I think the industry recognized the desire for local content and being able to establish a supply chain in the US. Which we're working on, every day, but it takes time. You cannot have, the panel and the cell plants are not coming up overnight. Even though Blattner is doing a great job to build stuff, it takes a little time to plan and to be able to deliver that. So there need to be a transition period to get there,
right?
And we need to work with the administration to get there. And right now, everything is happening a little bit at the same time. So it's a bit challenging.
We saw that on the wind side with. We needed to have more domestic manufacturing, but we needed to have some longer-term certainty so that Vestas and others could, Siemens could have domestic manufacturing. And you're right, scoping out sites to put a factory and negotiating with the state and getting it, building it and finding workforce and all those things, it will take a while. But on this issue, I've been thinking we need to walk and chew gum at the same time. We kind of need to do both. We need to solve the import dilemma, and we need to ramp up domestic manufacturing, which is in the federal energy bill. A lot of things. So what's everybody's hope for being able to come to a reasonable solution on the on the import issue? Ken, do you want to weigh in there?
I actually, if you don't, I was going to take it a different direction.
Oh,
I was going to,
okay.
Tristan's bringing up the kind of topic of the day, which I think is great, and it's right where his business is. And what I was thinking about, and because our business isn't in that necessarily contracted in that way, was longer term, and that is the transmission issue. I am, between transmission and permitting, there's a whipsaw of potentially, capacity on both fronts being quite limited. We can talk about that in a minute. What I would just back to the short term, it's kind of the ill-conceived notion of the step down of the PTC. We only have a short cycle in that period to kind of get the value proposition for these projects right. You got to bring a number of areas together. And what Tristan's highlighting, even today, if one of those pops in the wrong direction, the whole value proposition for these projects is off. They're uninvestable. And that all has to happen in sequence and in a very short time frame. So glad to see the old PTC paradigm of the ramp down off. I don't know who thought of that, but we should find that person and root them out. But in all seriousness, that to me is probably a short-term issue that has massive consequences for future investment and the certainty that we're all looking for. But as we look forward, I see transmission and local permitting as two issues that absolutely have to be solved if we're going to realize this 10-year paradigm that we're in. And the task we have is tall. I mean, we are very aware of what's going on in climate change, and there's no time to rest.
Yeah, I did forget to tell you that transmission's off the table. We already know that's an issue. No. We heard a lot today about transmission. I think there is so much activity going on, but as you all know, getting states to agree on what's going to be built, who pays for it, is a hard task. But I think the good news is we have as much laser focus on that issue collectively as we've ever had. And so I think that given that there are some tax incentives in the federal energy bills for transmission, that the administration and others understand that it is kind of standing between here and achieving the goal. I think they get it. I'm not sure that we have the tools. I'm less worried about the planning and the paying. I think we're going to get through that. I'm more worried about the siting and routing. Because those are the challenges that we're seeing on Cardinal Hickory Creek. Those are the things that I think are going to come up. So that final piece of getting steel in the ground, I think, is going to be a big challenge. That's why I think we need to be looking at, and people are looking at, are there bridge technologies to use our existing grid better? A trend we're seeing is utilities using their existing interconnection rights to interconnect new resources. So, do you guys think that's a bridge, or?
It is partly it's part of the answer.
Okay.
I would say we can do quite a bit with the existing right of way. Not enough for sure. And I agree that the long-term thing is the transmission. Transmission is key. When we had discussion at ACP about weighting the various elements of the policy in the Build Back Better package, as far as I'm concerned, I think transmission is the most important. We have extremely competitive cost of power, and what we don't have is a way to deliver it. And I also like to invite the legislator and regulator to think globally. The amounts, I mean, yes, there is a cost to transmission, but it reduces the cost for the ratepayer by a very significant amount. I remember Texas complaining about $7 billion spent in Texas for the CREZ, but when you look at how much it has reduced the tab for the users, it's a direct benefit. Only the PTC, without talking about the low cost of wind energy, only the PTC itself was a win for Texas. So I think when we look at it from a system point of view, yes, there is a cost to build transmission, but it is still the lowest cost solution for society in general, because you bring very abundant and low-cost resources to the people that need it.
Right.
So I agree 100%. And again, those partial solutions are part of the answer, but we're going to have to go beyond and do more for sure.
Yeah, I think that MISO always points out when we're talking about planning, especially with state regulators who have jurisdiction over siting and deciding what resources are going to go on the grid. Transmission is, a tenth of the cost. It's the new generation that, even as economic as the projects are, we've got capital costs that have to be paid off by ratepayers. So, and then I'm sure you're aware, one talking point we've been using around transmission, especially the MVP portfolio, is how much energy MISO was able to deliver during the February storm from PJM through MISO into SPP. They did an enormous amount. I mean, it's just, and they said, no matter how we slice and dice, who pays for that transmission? At the end of the day, it becomes for reliability and, keeping people alive. So I don't think that's quite sunk in to the decision makers' heads enough, but we'll keep saying it until it does. So anybody else have
No, I
thoughts?
think you're right on. There's some stopgap measures. Maybe
Yeah.
there's some additional load we can bring. There's green fuels. There are fuel switch opportunities, net zero. Those are really positive trends on how we can interconnect from a regulatory perspective. But I would consider those stopgap while we're waiting for long-term transmission to be built out. So we've got to find a way to break through some of the big things that you talked about. Those MVP lines were hugely impactful. We had 450 megawatts that were realized and are now out operating as a result of that. So those types of things we need to see. So
Yeah. So for challenges, we've already kind of addressed two I had here, the solar tariff issue, transmission. I had workforce and other supply chain issues. So let's talk about workforce for a second. Talk to me a little bit about what your companies are doing to develop workforce and find workforce, and how are you factoring in diversity and equity issues? And let's just dialogue about workforce for a little bit here. Candy, do you want to start?
Sure, yeah, definitely.
I know that you had told me that you're the cool mom because you've got a cool job in renewable energy.
Yes. So my recruiting strategy right now is my 15-year-old and his friends.
Yeah.
No, but it definitely goes back to that we need to look in this market and that long-term goal of renewable energies. There's viable careers here, whether that's in construction or developing. There's so many opportunities, and that younger generation, they do ask. They expect us to make the world a better place for them. They expect this renewable energy to come through. And Beth and I were talking about the fact that I have the house where all the teenagers hang out, and it's fun because they sit around the kitchen table and they ask me about work, and they talk about
That's
how
amazing.
I know, and I'm like, a bunch of 15-year-old boys, and I'm the mom with the cool job. Not the dads, I'm the mom with the cool job. So that's really awesome, and it's exciting because they're engaged, and they see the future of the renewable market. And so I think that overall as a whole is that we have to start building the brand around the renewable market and the long-term careers. I think, for us in the construction industry, that's really, helping to build the path for people from going from labor into those higher level positions, and, recruiting in unique ways, and helping to find people that have a passion for what we do. We build in 33 states across the nation, so depending on which state we're in, we'd definitely have to have a little bit different recruiting strategy, and as far as meeting those diversity goals as well. And so we do find, we're fortunate that we find people who really enjoy the work that we do, and they enjoy working for us, so they will relocate their families for us and go to different places. And one of the benefits of the projects getting bigger is that our crews are typically in a spot a little bit longer. And so that's a little bit easier for us to help people of, okay, we're going to move you here for a longer period of time versus 6 months and then relocate. And
when you have I know you do recruiting fairs in local areas. Do people even show up anymore? I mean, do you get anybody to turn out?
It's definitely recruiting has changed a lot in the recent year with everything happening. And so I think a lot of things are going virtual. And so we've done a lot of virtual fairs over the past few years. We do a lot of collaboration with a variety of different colleges throughout the nation to help bring in those younger construction folks to the team. And so recruiting in different ways, online, I think 2020 and everybody being at home in COVID has helped us to look at doing things differently, and having those virtual calls. And so now instead of us, driving across the country for a job fair, we can set up these virtual interviews with students via Zoom or Teams and get to know them a little bit better. So I think it's definitely changed the way that we recruit. And again, kind of where we're at in the pandemic determines if we're going to have those in-person fairs.
Right. Ken, I might, same question, but maybe just a little bit different tweak. Harkening back to the tax incentives that are going to be available, those stackable benefits if you use, I didn't bring my notes, but there's like 3 tranches. So if you use organized labor, if you have an approved apprentice program, are you guys going to try to capture all those? How are you going to try to approach getting the maximum incentive?
It's a great question. Tristan mentioned earlier, time is afforded to develop these programs that we haven't contemplated. Illinois, put in some legislation last year that was encouraging in a similar regard. And it just as a result, we have 3 projects in construction right now and a number of projects in development in Illinois. So we're very interested in pursuing kind of the bonus piece to make our projects more competitive. I think we will rely for large parts of the workforce on partners that are like in Blattner and in their space because we remain largely a professional force. So those will be things we're asking our suppliers for.
You guys have a tall order.
We do. Yeah. And I'll be honest, what I've learned about our new parent company, Quanta Services, is that they do have some really great training and development programs. They have an apprenticeship programs for some of their other service lines. So I'm excited to utilize and leverage those resources from our parent company to be able to meet those measures, because having that longer lead time, we want to help our owners be able to take advantage of all of these credits, and how can we get there? And so again, in that 5-year planning, how do we help them how do we get there so that we can support what they need so you can get the incentives?
Tristan, how do you think about this?
Well, I think you asked a question about incentives. Those are important, but I think more important for us is our talent acquisition and management strategy. It's one of our top 3 key initiatives. So
the EDP folks in the audience will be glad to hear this.
Okay. EDP or EDF?
EDF, sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. Glad for the EDP people as well. I'm sure they have the same question. Sorry.
Too many E's. You guys just stop doing the same names.
Electricity.
Yeah.
My apologies for bringing it up. But I mean, beyond the incentive, I think what's really important is that the younger generation, millennium and Z generation, have really a sense of mission, of purpose. So there is a ton of talented people, raw talent, highly motivated to come in the industry. Yeah. And our mission is really to train them. We have to be a training house. We have to incorporate so many young people and train them, and grow them into the jobs because we have more and more needs. But beyond the mission, I think what we're working a lot on is they're looking for something else. It's a different way of working. COVID has accelerated that, but even without COVID, it may have taken more time, but they look at work differently.
It's just emphasized it, I think. It's shown a spotlight on it.
And it accelerated the trend, I think, very, very much. So it forces the old guys that have been in this industry for 20 years like me to rethink the relationship a little bit differently. We need to provide, we're a large company, we're international, we're 160,000 60,000 employees worldwide. We deploy $2 billion a year in North America only. But we need to leverage those assets with a lot of autonomy, agility, and empowerment at the lower level. We need to offer those environments where people can express themselves and space of freedom so that they can grow. So it's a different working relationship that we need to have. It doesn't matter counting the number of days in the office or not, where they are. I don't care about that. What I care about is what they're going to be able to bring to the table and how we're going to fulfill their own desire and ambition. So it's a different mentality, and we have to work on that so that we can help that wonderful group of talented individuals to grow and deliver for the industry. You mentioned diversity earlier. I'd like to come back to that because that's one of the big demands of that generation. I've got 3 kids between 18 and 25, so they're right there going to the workforce.
Yeah.
And diversity is key. 60% of the people we hired this year were from diverse origin. Okay. So it's very important. It's a desire now from everybody, and it brings a lot of value to the company as well. So we've been working historically with a lot of colleges, in particular in the Midwest, but we have diversified that over the last couple of years to work with more minority-oriented colleges so that we can give easier access to our jobs to this kind of communities as well. So there is a lot changing in that aspect.
Mm-hmm. I think part of it is just exposing people to the opportunity, and then if they have the drive and the desire, they're going to go out and take advantage of that. But we've got to get into the places where the types of people that we hope to attract live.
Yeah, we've always emphasized diversity, but maybe without any real results. And when this kind of new wave of emphasis came, from the macro event, the first thing we did was have to tell our employees what we were actually doing. And we looked at the industry and saw that it pretty much looks the same, looks like me. And so we created awareness, and I'm just an operations guy, so we became much more programmatic in our approach to try to drive results. These are generational challenges, so we may not see results today, but we're working on that in that regard. And as you said, our employees are holding us accountable. And so doing the right thing is pretty easy in this industry when you have a workforce that's demanding that. And so it just, as I say to our employees, their kind of drive is elevating all of us.
Sure.
So we all become better people when we're centered on the mission.
You make a great point that you can work on it, but getting the results, those are 2 very different things, or they can be different things. So you have to work on it until you get the results that are needed. Just one other quick question on supply chain. Apart from solar modules, are there other supply chain issues just because of COVID and ships sitting out, or the container ships sitting out in the ocean?
How much time you got?
I mean, that's the big issue I've heard, but it's like, are we lacking bolts? Are we lacking glue guns? I mean, I don't know what supply.
Well, it's not only lacking; it's the price going up every minute.
Yeah.
And so
but are there
that's a
other
combination
things
of the 2.
in the supply chain that are holding up? I mean, I just talked to ITC and ATC today, and they said they're seeing it in their, I don't know if it's in their wire or their matting or their whatever, but they're seeing it and having to account for it.
I can chat a little bit about this. We have a really awesome supply chain team at Blattner, and definitely working very diligently to be able to get the supplies that we need for the market. And so each week they give us an update, and so it's not the commodity demand and the commodity availability definitely changes, and like Ken had said, it's the prices are definitely different. And so sometimes I feel like we went through a steel shortage, and then it was we can't get conduit, and now it's this wiring or that. And so when we're looking at the projects, we're working and looking at how can we be collaborative with our owners to make these projects go, and what can we do a little bit differently, and then how can we leverage buying power, like, okay, maybe this is our #1 wire, but we can't get that right now, so let's buy this in bulk. And part of the fun of doing the 5-year forecast is I get to bring forward and say, this is what we anticipate that we're going to need, so let's get ahead of the curve and buy in advance. And so one of the things that we utilize on our solar jobs are UTVs. And so the UTVs are how our staff move around on the sites, and we couldn't get one. And so one of the gals got creative, and she got a small bus and said, here's what we can get. And so sometimes it's just that outside the box, and how do we make this happen? And but I mean, definitely the supply chain right now it keeps me up at night too, because I know that our projects are moving, and how do we put, my boss Matt calls it his Tetris board, the schedule of projects that we have, and how do we make them all fit and work? And with the market being the way that it is, it's hard.
Right. Just keep that in mind when you open your Christmas presents this year. If you don't get exactly what you want, it's not your
Can you please not
Kid's fault.
order any Christmas gifts so that we can get the panels?
Yes.
Okay.
Agreed.
Homemade. Let's all
Cash
make
is
homemade. Yeah. So another big theme of the conference and of what we've talked about today a lot is partnerships. So let's talk a little bit about partnerships. Who do we need that we don't have at the table? Who do we need to connect even more with? What does CGA need to work on as far as partnerships? I'll just start by saying, today we had a workforce panel because we're growing more relationships with organized labor. We tried to tick away at some of the things that we know we're going to need, but I'm curious from your perspective. CGA, or in our formative years, Wind on the Wires, we're this purposeful collaboration of NGOs, ENGOs who have clean energy goals, and industry who can do projects and get things done. And I think that we have kind of our natural alliances, but we're really looking at, we did a little mapping project to look at all the kind of stakeholders and all the people that we interact with to say, if we needed to have a table of, I don't know, pick your number, 12 people, who are the 12 that we need to have at the table to get all this stuff done? So from your perspective, I mean, I think it's fair game to say, double down on your existing partnership with X, or you don't have this voice and you really need to grow it. So what are your thoughts about partnerships? Should we start with Ken?
Sure. Maybe just because Chris Kunkel's sitting in the audience, he's our policy lead for this region, and I had the opportunity a couple years ago to sit in a group of CGA folks, and we were working on a legislation initiative in Indiana.
Uh-huh.
And
yes, we were.
I was super.
And yes, we still are.
And we still are. And if we look at the states, we have a whole state where we really can't deploy wind, and it's a state that's absolutely ripe for wind. So from my perspective, what an effort. That was a great effort and pretty close. So I would say keep up with things like that. We have another state, Michigan, that clearly is calling out for state policy in some regard. We're township by township around really horrible ordinances. So as I said in the beginning, it was great to see the whole industry come together on a national level under ACP. And Tristan, you and your colleagues really appreciate the leadership that's gone on there. I know that wasn't easy to get everyone wrangled in, but it feels like we're a real coalition. And I think I was encouraged similarly in this region, seeing that effort in Indiana. I think more of that, to me, is on order.
Okay. Yeah, I would just point out that the one difference between ACP and CGA is we don't have utility membership. Mm-hmm. And I know that was probably a whole big conversation. But we feel like we still are at the point where our members need to have a space where their off-takers are not. And also that we have so many other ways that we partner with utilities. We feel like there's a lot of collaboration there already. So that's been our choice, and I think that's where we'll stick. But great on state policy, bringing those big teams together. I mean, shout out to Sean Brady, who really led that effort and was the glue that kept it together. And we had Chair Soliday on our state legislative panel, and he's great to work with, but he's got his particular viewpoints that are hard to work with sometimes. So we've had to do a lot of finessing of how we get there. And he really wants us to bring utilities to the table this time around. And we're hoping they're closer now than ever with us because they have all these goals about what they want to do with their generation mix. So, whoops. Tristan or Candy, ideas on partnerships?
For us, it's definitely the labor unions and having those partnerships and talking about realistically, okay, what are the needs of the Midwest? for labor when we're building these projects, and the reality of what's there in that pool, and how do we work collaboratively to be able to have efficiencies in those projects and meet those. And sometimes, right now we are paying higher prices to meet some of those ratios because there just isn't the labor pool here. And so how do we work differently and work collaboratively to be able to meet the needs that we have in the Midwest with resources, and how do we help grow those resources and get more people into those pools so that we have the resources we need?
Yeah. Well, I have a feeling with the new legislation, we're going to have those opportunities. So, yeah. What do you think, Tristan?
Well, you guys have been fantastic in the last 20 years to build partnerships, so I'm not sure there is a lot to add. It's a business where it's hard to not be partnered with other people. I think it's a good idea at the regional level to have an IPP voice, to have an industry voice that's not utility. And yet the utility have a huge role to play and have to be at the table, and we have a very good collaboration with them. Maybe one suggestion, I don't know CGA well enough, but one suggestion could be on the technology side, where I am not sure that the stopgap measures that Ken was talking about, thermal management and et cetera, are coming fast enough on the table, and whether there could be partnership with some companies that are developing those that could accelerate the adoption of those new technology coming up.
Okay.
That could be a suggestion in a area to look at.
Okay. So say a little bit more about that. You've piqued my curiosity.
Well, there is a number of startups, not many, but a handful of them that are looking at ways to better utilize the existing grid.
Okay.
And I think that we could be a little bit more proactive to bring them to the table, even if the solution is not ready today, to prepare for that. Because instead of doubling the size of the line in 10 years, we're increasing 20% in 3 years, and that's already a good step. So, again, just a thought.
No, I think our team believes strongly that that's going to be needed. We do try to keep up with the trends of who's doing what, but we're all ears about what our member companies who are doing projects think is needed. And we do have a lot of people reaching out to us all the time. So being able to get somebody's opinion on, hey, how about this one versus this one or this one, So we'll think more about that.
Maybe just a point there.
Yeah.
One of the reasons, thank you, Joe Biden, not to be political at all, but we've seen this federal policy come because of strong leadership at the federal level,
right,
but also because we have a singular voice in the industry. Mm-hmm. And so when we're participating with MISO and others, it's really important that our member companies here participate, but also the more we can come together with a single voice and not be distracting with kind of the one-offs. And I've seen that in the ACP trying to kind of, there's great ideas and great initiatives, but we're kind of past good idea time, and we need to bring strong ideas that are very simple. We only get so much time.
Yep.
And we need to utilize that time wisely to make our strong points, whether it's with MISO, state legislators, and I think where companies are kind of shooting off on their own, it's not always helpful to the cause. So bring it back into the coalition.
Well, we try to keep you guys in line. No, over the 20 years that we've been in existence, I can only think of 3 times when we've had something that has been so difficult that we've had to bring it up to the board for a decision, and we've really had people on different sides. One was net zero when it was very, very new, and who was going to get abuse the capacity. We had a second unit going in at Big Stone that would facilitate 800 megawatts of wind, and our NGO partners said, over our dead bodies, are we constructing that unit? So we opposed the line, and it didn't go. There are just a few things where we've had to have really big conversations, but we've survived through it. Yeah. We haven't lost members, and we've been stronger on the other side. So I'm curious of we're a little regional organization, and 10 staff strong and lots of you guys, but are there things that we could be doing with the trade orgs at the federal level with SEIA or ACP that we're not doing now that we should be partnering more on? You guys are very active in those orgs, what kind of partnerships should we have? They've participated with us over the years, but lots of things have changed. So, do we need to strengthen that? Do we need to do it differently? What do we do?
I'm not sure there's something that comes to mind right away, but I would say that this articulation between the regional organization and ACP is very, very important, or RCA for that matter. We have always stressed that at the board of ACP, and we EDF really wants to have a regional partner that looks at the state policies, because it's really hard to do that from Washington. And I'd like to give some kudos to ACP doing that on the Texas crisis. We had to make a few phone calls so that, because ACP was initially, I'm talking about hours here or days of delay, but was not jumping on the topic. And we have a great partner locally, APA, that ACP has backed and has worked really well with. So I think it's hard for me to tell you what you should do with ACP. What I can tell you as a board member of ACP, we are watching very closely that ACP works collaboratively with the regional partner. And I think there is a big consensus on that. So I just think we have to be open, and in particular in terms of crisis, looking for alignment on the medium-term goal, and being able to work well in terms of crisis is critical.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Perfect. So maybe we'll see what kind of questions we have coming in. What trends are you seeing for capital and tax equity markets, corporate project finance, cost of capital? Anybody want to tackle that one?
Yeah, sure. Our company was just purchased, so there are a lot of investors. It speaks. There's a huge demand for clean energy from the corporate side, utilities, states, municipalities, now federal. So demand is huge. There's a lot of money to be put to work. It just has to be of value. So we're seeing direct pay coming through this policy, which will be a massive change.
Yeah.
And allow for more degrees of freedom from traditional tax equity. So there's a lot, as you said at the beginning, there's a lot to understand and unpack, but I think folks are already off and running on that. We're super encouraged by that. That was a big initiative for Apex, and we're thrilled to see that's part of it. So those structures will change a bit as we move out, and then folks take direct pay and figure out how to monetize the depreciation assets and things like that. But there's a lot of money out there for smart projects, and there is, as I've said earlier, there's a scarcity of projects. So that's where,
which is incredibly hard to believe given the queue.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good point. That's part of the problem. Anybody else have thoughts on that?
Maybe the only negative thought on that is I think there's plenty of money available. I agree with everything that Ken said for a good project. So you were talking about how to manage the growth. I would add the word profitable in there, because we've seen the Yieldco, we've seen a lot. That this industry is big and getting bigger every month, and is getting less profitable every month. So the ice is getting thinner and thinner on those projects. So it's important to manage that profitable growth. And from that point of view, transmission again is critical, because the level of negative pricing and basis risk that we see today are really hurting the project big time, and that has an impact on financing as well. So between the queue and the size of the queue and the project that are really available, there is a big discrepancy that is due in part because of the queue reform itself, but also because of that, because to make those projects real takes a lot of, and make them profitable and real takes a lot of energy. So one of the things that I'd like you guys to pay a lot of attention to is negative pricing, especially in an era of generalized PTC. We're going to see more negative pricing, which is where the developer has to pay for the tax equity to be paid. So it's coming to a point where it's not really healthy, I think, the economics in general, in terms of too much negative pricing. There's something to watch. For me, that's a danger of the financeability of the project, is getting to a price that becomes too low and doesn't make any sense.
Right. Okay,
Great
got
point.
it. This is a great question. How much of your future growth is driven by C&I, commercial industrial customer demand, compared to utility demand? So I was going to ask, what kinds of revisions or differences are you seeing in what C&I customers want? Or, we've kind of had this market that has had varying degrees of things. I mean, we've had VPPAs for a while. We've had contracts for differences, which I guess a VPPA is essentially. But there's been different iterations. Are you seeing anything new on the horizon with C&Is? one question I've had is, do you build in some of that transmission risk or that transmission cost into your C&I project? Because you have to, and do C&Is understand how scarce transmission capacity is, and that it's actually going to cost something for you to do to finance upgrades to transmission?
That's a great question. That's something we're working on right now with many of the customers that we've worked with, and trying to build in some flexibility and talk to them about certainty of a project and how we need some flexibility. So those discussions are progressing. Like I said, their goals are well stated, their demand is high.
Yeah.
They're still obviously price driven, but we've seen some flexibility in that regard, and we've been encouraged that they are putting principle over profit in certain regards to allow for projects to move forward.
We've had members ask us, what are you doing to educate C&Is about transmission? And, we've done a variety of things. We've worked with REBA. We've had them quantify demand to put into MISO to plan around. But I'm not the one across the negotiation table, so I don't know how you guys talk about it with them.
I think there is still a lot of, so we see some buyers that are very sophisticated and understand those markets. They're actually hiring people from the industry quite a bit.
Well, now you know what it feels like.
Yeah, exactly. So some are very sophisticated, but there is a lot of education to be done still.
Yeah.
And yes, we're pricing it. I mean, we went from 10 years ago, me telling our VP of engineering, why do we need ProMod? To we have like 12 ProMod modelers full time now that are modeling. So we have a lot of sensitivity. This is one of the key risks today. And I wish I would say more would put principle over profits, but it's still very much of a buyer's market. Yep. From that point of view, there is still a lot of supply of project with very buyer-friendly terms.
Okay.
So it is still pretty much C&I friendly. It's a big market, and I think there is some education to be done. What I really appreciate is the fact that the C&I, the big buyers are really genuinely in favor of renewable, and they're pushing. And when we have the Texas legislative battle that we're fighting, they're next to us, and REBA is next to us. So that's a good thing. But I think that bring them to the table to be able to solve the transmission issue in general, and the resiliency and combating negative pricing, etc., is still a big equation to solve that we have not solved yet.
Right. And I think we've heard from some C&Is who take their energy at the bulk transmission level. They don't want to pay for transmission or more for transmission. So they're looking really closely at cost of energy and what this is going to do. So, okay. Well, let's see here. Have customers been receptive to sharing some of the risks related to tariffs, general procurement uncertainty? How can you continue to sell projects during this time if customers are not willing? Well, I think what I just heard you say is not necessarily on the tariff issue, but you certainly must be talking to your customers about the challenges that you're having, and so they're fully in the know. And if they want the product, they're going to have to be a little bit flexible and work with you guys.
I think that's right. And maybe back to the last question about utility versus C&I, we've seen an explosion in C&I because the utility process takes so long.
Oh, sure.
And our projects don't afford that amount of opportunity. Plus, so much of the value in the projects is in the merchant curve on the back end past the contract period.
Yeah.
So it's great that we have these utility processes, and we'd love to participate in them more, but if that takes a year and a half while the project's ready to go, and we can sign a contract in a matter of a few weeks with the C&I partner, that's the path we're going to take. So the utilities will continue to miss out and potentially not meet their goals, and we see a number in that camp. So somehow they have to reconcile their process against what the market's doing.
That's really good insight. When we participate in utility integrated resource plans, and they have a process which yields an RFP, usually those are big when they come, but they're very painful and long to get through. So, my saying is, I like my, RFPs or my procurement in 1,000 megawatt chunks. Thank you very much. But forget those 200-300 megawatt things. We need thousands. So that's interesting to hear kind of the dynamics in that
Maybe
buying space.
a couple
Yeah.
of thoughts. First
Yes.
of all, not all RFPs are painful and
No,
ill-designed.
I know. We don't want to throw
there are some
RFPs under the bus.
Some
Yep.
utilities or public organizations that are doing that very well. I'm thinking about
Yeah.
NYSERDA, for example.
Yeah.
The work that New York has done in 3 years, coming from very little and renewable to having a well-oiled process. They really listen to. They want to reach their goal of 70%, and they're really listening to the industry, and they're adapting the RFP process. So the problem is that when the RFP process is driven by a dialogue where you can discuss what is possible, what is not possible, it's very different from when you just have something that comes out of the book and you just apply it without really thinking about it. So, so first of all, I'd like to
Shout out to.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, nice.
Secondly, I think on the renegotiation. So again, in the past 17 years before the trade war, we had never had to renegotiate a contract. We had delivered 100% of the PPA we had signed. And then when the tariff came on, I mean, there was a real example where there's nothing you can do. It's a tariff, it's explainable, you can quantify, and et cetera. So as usual when it happens, and we're in the second wave right now with that increase in 25% of cost in solar, where we have a second wave. And as usual, EDF, we're always told that we're the first one to say we're going to have to change the price. And it takes a few weeks, a few months for CNI to accept that. And then you can renegotiate, you can't. But the reality of the market is that prices have increased by several bucks a megawatt hour, if not more, in the last 12 months. And there is nothing you can do. It's just, we're a cost-plus business. We don't have, the projects are not that profitable that you can swallow a big difference. And when you're below your profitability, once you have taken out the sunk cost, then you just have to cancel the project. So it's a very difficult situation for them and for us. One of the key questions, I think, towards that question is, what is the world of tomorrow going to look like? In 2008 came out the shale gas, which has switched from a world where electricity was 4% more expensive every year. So you had to build as quickly as possible so that you are building at a lower cost. And then we switched to a world where next year is going to be minus 4%. So you had to delay as long as you could your procurement. And right now, the whole debate or discussion around inflation, is that sustainable or not sustainable? Are we going? The IEA report that came out earlier this Monday, I think, stipulate that they think that because of scarcity of resources, because of outage in China, because of this, because of that, we're back to energy cost upward trend for a durable period of time, 20, 30 years. So
To say nothing of natural gas prices, I mean, how high they are right now.
exactly, but it's linked to the cost of carbon.
Right.
If you look at the shale gas is available, right? It's available. There is 4 times more gas available, minus $4 a megawatt hour, an MMBTU, than the U.S. consumption. So there is plenty of gas available in the U.S. only. The question is, are we going to drill it out, and are we going to burn it? And depending on the cost of raw material and the race towards a carbon-free economy, is that going to drive an increase in cost? Are we going to impose a methane leak regulation, stuff like that? So it's really, we may be at a time where the changes of COVID are not so transient, they may be permanent, and that will completely change the dialogue with the customers, whether they're utilities or CNI. And if you know the answer, or if one of you have an answer, I'd love to share more about that. I don't have them, but that question is really up to my mind right now. Let's keep me awake during the day.
Yes, that's a hard one to know what to do with. You have to manage it the best you can, but what do you do? So, Kelly, what time are we at?
10 minutes.
Okay, awesome. I wanted to turn to, I want to hear just if there's any additional thoughts in your mind, but before we do that, green hydrogen. I know Apex is bullish on green hydrogen.
Yeah.
You guys are.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about what that means. I need some education on where this is going, and is it real, and are we going to get there, and what do we need to do about it? I'm not convinced yet.
Well, we can look at other markets outside of North America and see what's happening in Europe, for example.
Yep.
There are real projects, and they are going forward, and there are large projects in development, and people are investing in those projects. And then now we're seeing the first small scale and maybe large scale opportunities here in the U.S. So,
but is it real?
It is absolutely real.
Okay. Just
I will
checking.
tell you, we signed a PPA, and
Yeah.
there's real security involved, and
Yeah.
real payments, and a real
Yeah.
program.
Well,
and,
I think we've seen other plants go down that road
Yeah.
and haven't.
and you know,
penciled out.
and I'm the operator guy, so I have a healthy dose of skepticism. But as we saw this opportunity with Plug Power develop, we saw their continued interest all the way through the commercial process, and that was very encouraging, and kind of won over some of us more skeptical folks on their ability to deliver, their appetite, and others in that space as we've reached out to. It's a global issue. There's a global market developing. So we're super encouraged about it, and we think that co-locating load to our projects could help us mitigate some of these transmission issues that we're seeing
Okay.
in the short run.
Sure. Candy, you were even talking about kind of new business lines that you guys were looking at. Are you looking at green hydrogen?
We definitely are keeping our eye on the emerging markets and,
Okay.
and seeing what's out there. And with green hydrogen, I can't say that we're going to make the leap just yet. We would definitely want one of our, it would be conversations with a strategic partner that would need us for that. But, we keep a pulse on the emerging markets. At this point, we haven't made any commitment to moving into it, but it's intriguing.
Okay, Tristan.
So it is definitely real. The question is, what is it? Yes, there is a huge market. There is a huge potential in different areas. We are building project in Europe. I was in France a month ago to do a very big dive on the technology. There is significant technology risk that you need to control, and you need to find the right business model. Most of the projects now are still dependent on some form of subsidies, and the Build Back Better plan will hopefully bring that to fruition, and that would be a great boost to the U.S. market. But you're going to have to find what is the business model that you're going to do, and what are the initially niches that are going to real market that you want to step into. So yes, it is real. We are working very hard on it. We were building project in Europe. Hopefully we'll build some in the U.S. in a couple of years. But you have to really be selective about where you want to be. And it's a very different market and very different operational risk and technology risk from, if you think that batteries were different from wind and solar, and they were. Hopefully I can say that because we've been through some growing pain like a lot of other people.
Yeah.
And I think we're past that. But it's another order of magnitude different, maybe 2 orders of magnitude different from a technology point of view than what the difference between battery and solar or solar and wind. So yes, it is real. The question is to define what it is and how big it is.
Okay. Well, I think it's something that CGA is definitely watching. We don't have a lot of expertise on it, so we'll have to learn together.
You're not alone. Nobody does.
Yeah.
So everyone's learning together. It looks like wind, 15, 20 years ago.
Right. So we know what keeps Tristan up during the day and at night, but how about just some final kind of wrap-up thoughts, where things are going, what you're excited about, what gets you up in the morning, and what you're nervous about, or just something, whatever you want to share that you haven't already kind of dumped on the table.
Sure, I can start. What gets me up in the morning is, it's such an exciting market, and everything. There's so many exciting things happening right now, and seeing this being on the forefront of an energy transition is amazing. And to look at it and say, what we do every single day is changing the world. Like, we change the world, and we are making it a better place. Like, how cool is that? That's exciting to be a part of that, and to be on the forefront and helping to transition. And so not only, that, and again, the mom with the cool job that gets me to go to work every day, it's, I work in construction, and, people think we're swinging hammers and saws, and
Don't you ever get out there?
Right, I would love to. But I grew up in a construction family, and not only is the renewable market transitioning and the energy market transitioning, but the construction industry is transitioning. There's so much new technology out there, and things that we can incorporate into the job site to make it safer and more efficient. And so it's exciting to make construction new and innovative. And so that's exciting to work with our innovation team and see what kinds of things we're testing and bringing out and doing in the job sites. So I really enjoy that part of what I do, and figuring out the solutions of, hey, we need to get here in 5 years. So what's our plan right now? And our department built a 5-year plan, and I gave it to our vice president, and he said, how are you going to find these people? And I said, well, grow them. And he said, yep. We will.
That's what I heard from Tristan, yeah.
And so that's, I
Yeah.
mean, that's exciting because you're giving people career growth and opportunities. And so those are the things that excite me. I think we know the supply chain keeps us up at night, and so.
Yeah. Ken?
We've talked about challenges and opportunities, but if we just took a step back and looked at where we've been and where we've gotten to over the last 15 or so years as an industry, it's amazing. You know, could we have thought 15 years ago that we would have 100 gigawatts plus of wind deployed in the U.S.? You know, I didn't think that in 2012. But maybe we might get like 3 more turbines out. So it's incredible. What that shows me is that we're a very resilient people in our industry. We've overcome, you said 3 freak out moments or 3 major moments. We've had a lot of them.
And a lot of hard work in between.
A lot of hard work. But what's really cool about this industry is, and these projects, it brings all these diverse folks together: construction, engineers, bankers, farmers, you know, C&I customers, all, and sometimes all at the same time, solving problems. So if you like getting after problems and challenges and working on projects that have meaning, what a great place to be. And I can't think of a better time, as we've told new employees coming in, what a great time to join this industry. We've learned a lot of lessons. I think I got a PhD in lessons learned, what not to do. But what a great time. We've got that strength behind us, that education, and we can apply that to the next round here. And we are really excited to get after it and run into this next decade of certainty.
I think there's a lot of veterans in the industry right now who have been through that wind cycle, and they're now applying it to solar.
Yeah.
So that's just a trend that, you know, I've done this for 20 years. So there's a lot of people who are forming new partnerships, veterans who are going together, veterans from the industry, and forming new companies, making that competition even, you know, stronger and looking for kind of that next big challenge. So yeah, lots of interesting things. So Tristan, you get the final word.
I hope you have one after me, because mine may not be as, I agree with you, Ken and Candy, that we live a fantastic time. I'm so privileged to work with fantastic people, and it's such a great evolving market and companies and et cetera. So all of that is very true and very satisfying if we look backwards. But we don't need 100 gigawatt today. We need 300 gigawatt today. And 3 times more in 5 years. And recently, that's the gloomy part. I was discussing with my kids about their future, and I was talking about carbon capture and hydrogen and, you know, making plants and, you know, maybe carbon capture in 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years from now, we should start to see the trend going in the other direction. And my son was silent, and he looked at me and he said, "Dad, you're talking about my lifetime before it becomes as good as it is today." And that pressure is on me every morning. We have to do more, we have to deliver more. I'd like to see this country at 80% voters. It's unacceptable that we have only 50% participation to election. We are a democracy. We should not be proud of being at 50%. We have to take our destiny, we have to take the destiny of the planet in our hands and change it at a bigger space and for a bigger scope than what we have today. It's not very optimistic, but I'm going to be working on it.
No, it's a call to action.
It is. We have much more to do.
And that's a great segue, because CGA is a get her done organization. So we're gonna tackle those challenges. You know, and I will have just one word here. I think for me, the change and the kind of things reinventing themselves every 4 or 5 years in this business, it's been like having a whole new job. And so you feel like, hey, I get to work with the same people that I really like to work with, but I have these new challenges and I feel refreshed to kind of work on this next set of whatever. So that's what I think has been interesting, is you can remain in the same job and have a really fulfilling career, but you have change and growth. And, you know, we said for a long time that we were at 13% renewable energy in MISO. Well, we're sneaking up towards 20. Now, how about that, Tristan? 20. But yes, we need to triple or quadruple what we're doing every year. But at least on the, you know, on the landowner side and working on the community local stuff, I mean, people are seeing a lot of development in their communities. So that brings its own challenges. But so it is, it is really gratifying to see what all of us have done, because a lot of us have been working together for a long time. So I so appreciate having you
Thank you
guys
very
here,
much. Thank you.
having the sponsorships and support from your companies, being able to think about working collaboratively together and solving these next tranche of challenges. So thank you for being here. And thank you very much to everyone for spending some time with us today. I really enjoyed the day, this discussion, the great questions we received, all the breakouts, everybody who was at home and in our studio audience. It's been quite a day. It's been great. Thank you so much for being with us today and for your support. If you enjoyed today's conference, I hope you'll share some high points on social media using the hashtag #BuildingPartnerships. Be sure to stay in touch with us on social media or through our newsletters for more information. We're going to have a wrap party of our 20th anniversary on June 7th, 2022 at Erickson Farm. It's just going to be a party, no heavy duty going into the weeds. We mean that quite literally. We want to celebrate where we've been. So mark your calendars now, plan to bring your spouse or a friend. It's going to be something that people will want to come to. So it'll be a great time. We look forward to seeing you there. And thank you for the day, everyone.